Hello and welcome to Events, Dear Boy, a new podcast for anyone involved in business events. If you're a conference producer, corporate event organiser or events agency, then we're here for you. We want to share the highs and the lows, the best practices and the horror stories. You can expect ideas and inspiration, and maybe some laughs too.
And if you're a speaker at these events, then we're here for you too. We'll be talking about how you do it, what makes speakers nervous, and how it feels when it all goes well or terribly.
My name is Catherine McNamara and I'm the marketing lead at the talent agency Pomona Partners, and someone who has organised many business events in my working life. Alongside me is Pomona Partners founder and veteran of 1,000 speaking gigs, Tom Cheesewright.
Each episode, we're going to be joined by someone from the business events space, either an organiser or a speaker. We'll ask them to share their experiences, both good and bad, and their tips for other people in their positions.
And this week, we're delighted to be joined by James Goad. James, welcome.
Hello, nice to see you guys.
Excellent. So, James, tell us a little bit about your role.
So I set up Owen James some 18 years ago.
Wow.
A long time ago, but we used to organise big events on cruise ships with a firm called Richmond Events, where we would stick about 1,000 people on a cruise ship, send it out to sea for 3 days. All sorts of funny stories would happen on the boat while they were out there, which I can't repeat on air. But it was wonderful fun. So I kind of fell into events by accident, and after 6 years of being on a cruise ship, decided to set up my own events business, focused specifically in financial services, and really targeting different communities across the financial services financial services industry, and ideally really trying to provide a platform to drive change for them.
Very good. So they're not on cruise ships. What sort of events are you putting together? Obviously, I know because I spoke at one the other day, but tell us a bit about the
You
event.
did, and you did a wonderful job. So
Thank you.
so these are what we found when we were on the cruise ship. These were big events, as I say, sort of 1,000 people, and there was a real need at the time where people were saying, look, we want more curated events where we can bring specific decision makers together to come to strategize with each other around the key challenges they're facing at a personal, business and industry level, and try and help drive change. And really that's what we do today. So we target these different communities, everything from retail banking and brands all the way through to asset management and private banking. And for each of them, we bring together around 100 CEOs, key decision makers from the biggest firms within each of those communities. We do lots of research with them in the run up to understand, well, what is it that's keeping them up at night? And we then bring the consultants, regulator, other key, if you like, agents of change together to these events to then work through their challenges and see where we can find ways to drive that change forward.
Yeah, and they're really participatory, which I really like. There's opportunities for people to actually communicate, connect, like share their answers to challenges. They're great fun ones to participate in as a speaker, as well as ones to get up and speak at.
Yeah, I think that's always been our USP. When we started, the first kickback was people saying, hang on, you're asking me to come together with all my competitors and talk openly round a table or at an event around what's keeping me up at night, what I'm great at. And there was real nervousness. And really, when they came together, there was this quick realization, look, these problems are bigger than all of us can solve alone. And one of the first things people always say when they come into our events, the communities are well established, they've been going for years now, but it's the openness of the group and how much they are willing to share with each other. It's all Chatham House rules, so people know they can speak openly in confidence.
James, the business is a grown-up teenager now, but you'll obviously have seen quite a few changes, not least from those early days where you were kind of on cruise ships. But what are some of the key things that have happened, moved on, that you would maybe pick out from that last 18 years?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's two angles in terms of the themes that the industry are talking around. If I was to go back 18 years and look at we write up all the findings, to be honest, a lot of the challenges the industry are facing are very similar, just with different acronyms associated with them. However, as an events perspective, we've been through massive, massive change. So obviously, when COVID hit, everything went online. We had a real focus on not having if you, just a webinar approach, but really trying to keep that strategic engagement on screen, and that served us really well during COVID. When we came out of COVID, there was a sense that hybrid was the way forward. The reality is, what we found when we're bringing global audiences together, there is a place for hybrid, but the reality is where we are today. It's very much in person or virtual. But so we went down the road of offering all our events to be hybrid, and we just saw the number of virtual attendees was reducing, and the number of in person was increasing. Whereas there's this real hunger now for people to want to connect in person at events. So it if you ask me straight after COVID, we really thought the future was bright for hybrid. The reality is there is absolutely a place
Mm.
for virtual, absolutely a place for in person. Hybrid less so. But occasionally when you're bringing global audiences together. But I would say it's really moved in those two directions.
I like it. I'm glad that people have got that hunger to get face to face back, and people are really craving it. And you feel it in the room as well. Yeah, you even a couple of years on, you still really sort of feel that passion for getting together and discussing stuff and having a cup of tea and a bit of cake and chatting things through. Is that one of the things that you sort of love about the role and about organising events? Like, what are your favourite bits? Is it that sort of getting together with your networks and seeing people again? What else do you really enjoy?
Yeah, 100%. It's about being in person, and I think it's seeing the openness people are. So when we came after COVID, there was a real nervousness of people, and it's interesting. Even Tom, the event you were at recently, there were two people that were there who basically said they were coming to the first event since COVID because they had been nervous. So there is still this slow
Wow.
return. To be honest, they're outliers, but it is still a slow return. But they said the same thing. They said, once they were in person, they didn't realize how much they'd missed it and how much they wanted to be together. So for me, it's the opportunity to reconnect with friends and peers across the industry. And I think people would just miss that cathartic nature of being open with each other. You can get stuck, whether it's working from home or in the office, within your own bubble, and the opportunity to come out of that bubble and realize actually everyone else is going through all of this, and we can share our experiences.
Mm.
And yeah, that's absolutely what I love, that opportunity to collaborate and strategize with peers and friends.
And if that's what you love about it, what do you despise about it? Or what are the bits that you would say, I will happily delegate this your way?
After 18 years, you must be able to delegate some bits.
Yeah, I'll be careful with my teams listening here because I'm hoping that's the bits they love. Uh, to to be honest, we're very lucky in the fact that we deal with these smaller communities, so across financial services. I mean, as always, the bit I love is the being in front of customers and in front of clients and seeing them at events and seeing the magic of an event come together. There's always a lot of admin associated with that in the build up, and as an event organizer, you always have to be that swan, and there's always the stuff that's going on with venue and catering and all of that. And I'm very fortunate that I've got a brilliant events team behind me that can pick up all of that, and I can focus on the fun stuff of being in front of clients.
Going back then, 18 years, it's a fair sort of array of events. Is there one that you can pick out that you're most proud of?
Yeah, I think that if I look across there's always you always feel there's an energy that is associated with events, and every now and then you can pick where there's been an event where there's been real meaningful change, where if you like, the industry has come together as a zeitgeist. And there was one we ran, it was probably around 7 years ago, where the private banking and the wealth management community in the UK, they all came together. They were really frustrated with the amount of regulation and so on, and all came together and decided that, look, we need a collective voice and we need Owen James. And it felt like a real moment of a, a real catalyst where and we help drive that change. And I love that when you just feel that energy in the room where people are, instead of just banging their own drum, they really come together collectively, and we can help drive that change.
So that's kind of an immense sense of pride. Equally, you must have those moments. You must have had some kind of squeaky bum moments, some of those. What's the event disasters, things that have gone wrong? Are you able to share any of those stories with us?
I'm terrified that there's going to be a story from a cruise ship because there's just so much that could go wrong.
To be honest, there were lots on cruise ships. A lot on the cruise ships was more people just having too much to drink and getting themselves into trouble. And but th- the th I think one of the things I love about events is it's this whole analogy of being the swan, but actually there are things going wrong all the time, and you're having to think on the job and you're having to fix. So everything from, I remember we having a keynote speaker and we were up there, and the whole of the AV broke down. They were very slide heavy, reliant on their slides, and you have to keep going. You've got an audience of over 100 people. um, or it can be stuff with the venue. So I mean, Tom, at the event you were at recently, the venue forgot to tell us that there was a wedding going on at the same time as we had our industry event, and the poor bride having to walk through our event with a cake in the middle. And it was, and it's always having to fix. That's the bit I love, is you're constantly fixing problems, and in the eyes of the clients who are there, they don't see any of this. But at the end of it, you have that real sense of achievement. And I'd say with every event, there's always at least 6 or 7 big potential disasters that you're fiending off or palming off. What the real pride is when you talk to the clients and they just have no idea that any of this is happening in the background, and you've managed to avert any disasters and so on.
Brilliant.
That's it, isn't it? That's the bit about your job that I just think really don't fancy, is that you're constantly sort of hiding disasters from
Shielding.
everybody
I think
else.
it's the way of life there. It's but that's
And
what keeps it interesting. It's and we're very, we do a lot of upfront prep to try and avert a lot of these disasters, but they do come. And yeah, I think it would be boring if you had none of these disasters to avert. So
So listen, you've already said nice things about me, so thank you very much for that. But other than me, who's been your favourite
um,
speaker to date?
So it's a really hard one because we've had a lot of good speakers, and Tom, you are amazing, and obviously good to get that vision of the future. I mean, normally I would say you, but in this case, I'll try and think of another. Um, so we've had, for example, we had one of the founders of Apple come across and talk around their experiences of setting up. Of setting up Apple and how you drive change. But for me, the best speakers have been the ones that have been slightly antagonistic, slightly shock tactics, but really then get the audience connecting and talking afterwards. And one person who's always been brilliant at that is a geopolitical speaker. We have a chap called Matthew Goodwin, and he can talk around anything from what's going on with geopolitics to cancel culture and so on. But and he's always been fantastic about really just sparking an audience and then getting them go away slightly energized, slightly angry, slightly frustrated, but all connecting and all talking and all buzzing afterwards. And it's like finding a speaker that can really inject that kind of passion and energy in the room is quite hard to find sometimes.
He certainly fires people up. It's Yeah, the co-author of a book with one of our other clients actually, but we don't talk about that too much.
So, James, what tips do you give to speakers? What tips would you give to speakers for these events if you could kind of impart kind of one key thing?
I suppose from a speaker perspective, I would always say less is more. I always think it's great if you can. We do have a number of speakers that don't use any slides, so you don't want slide heavy, but it's always good to have a few visuals just to keep on track. Um, but yeah, we normally find the best speakers are those that will talk for say just 20 minutes and leave plenty of time. You get lots of speakers that will go for say 40 minutes, and we find the attention span that works really well with our audience is typically about 20 minutes, leaving time for Q&A. And also, if you can, to be not to be just tied to the podium and have that ability to walk around stage and loosen up the
Mm.
audience and get that audience engagement.
Now we have quite a few other events organised listening to this, including people who are sort of early or at the start of their careers. What tips would you give to other event organisers? You've had this business for 18 years, and clearly you're in another business for 6 years before that. What can you share as your best tips, particularly people maybe at the
I
start of
mean,
their career?
I would say the event industry has changed massively. A lot of people think of an event just as that moment in time when people walk through the doors, they come into the event, and then they leave. The reality is to think of it as more of a campaign, as 3 or 4 months. It's the whole build up, and what we're seeing increasingly for an event, it's not. There's so much tech that can support the event. You've got AI, but it's the data that's feeding in that's really important. So for us, it's think about the community within your event. Don't think about just that moment in time when you're engaging. Think of it raw around a campaign.
Mm.
What sort of data are you getting from your audience, and then how are you using technology to help connect? um, I think a lot of people forget how difficult it is, whether for participants, particularly if you're a delegate, you're walking into a room with 100, 200 people, you don't know many people, the awkwardness. How can you help facilitate those meetings? When people look at a list of people, how can you facilitate them to sort of say, well, actually, here are 10 people you probably should be meeting, and making sure that happens. So I think often the mistake is just to focus on the day of the event, where it's really looking at the community. Are you getting the right data to enable the right connections and the right meetings before, at, and afterwards? And what is the purpose of that event ultimately, rather than it just being a celebration at a single point in time?
I think
Brilliant.
that's a really, really kind of pertinent point, and it is something just from my involvement people completely miss the point on in terms of affording yourself that time, that planning time, having a really clear brief, really clear objectives, and like you say, handling it as though it is a campaign. And do you know what, James? That's a really great place to wrap it up. And thank you so much for coming on. And thank you too for listening and watching. We hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please leave a review, like, and subscribe. And most importantly, share this podcast with your colleagues and peers, whether they're fellow speakers or event organisers. And we'll be back soon with another episode. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye bye.